Well, hello everyone. It is that Weems guy here for another episode. We're on a streak. Like this is like several weeks in a row. I don't know how we're managing to pull this off, but the holidays are coming up, so maybe we'll mess it up. Joining us tonight is Justin, and Justin's been on one time previously on like a recap episode because he attended the very first Cognitive Conclave.
I did.
Uh,
That was my first time training with you, the first time I ever met you. I saw that come out. I thought I was the first person to sign up. I probably wasn't, but
yeah, I don't remember who signed up first, but you were among the first of them. Yeah. We just had the second one of those. It was like a 2 year hiatus in between the first one and the second one. Hopefully we'll get them more frequently than that. But
yeah, I did see the second one come out, and unfortunately I had a scheduling conflict. But
yeah, well,
uh,
well, you've been
um,
busy lately.
yeah, yeah, that's for sure.
If you would introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure. My name is Justin. My favorite Mike Seeklander quote is, "If I give you my whole resume, it sounds like I can't hold down a job." I did 8 years on active duty in the military as a special operator. Left there, contracted overseas for a couple government agencies. I taught full time at the Marine Special Operations Schoolhouse for right at 5 years. Spent a couple years of aimless wonder, self-employed, living in a van with my German Shepherd. I got hired by a startup in DC or Northern Virginia in 20. I don't know. I forget the year. Anyway, worked there for a little. Took a lifestyle change to get out of the Beltway, and COVID happened. I just happened to be in the right time, right place to go to EMT school, then paramedic school. Got hot and heavy into that. Also jumped into our regional search and rescue team, mountain rescue team as well. And then just recently went to Night Police Academy while working at EMS full time. And in July, transitioned into full time law enforcement. So a little bit of everything.
There you go. Um, it's interesting, every state does it different. We're not going to talk about specific states here, but going back through after all the other training you've been through, then coming back through like a night academy, were you significantly older than most of the other students in the program?
So there were two guys who were about my age,
Hmm.
and weirdly, two of the oldest people in the class were physically by far the dominant two people in the class. The
Hmm.
kind of the scat, their defensive tactics all stars. There were definitely some younger guys or younger people, men and women.
Hmm.
I guess everybody skews a little bit older in a night class just because they're non-traditional students, not right out
Hmm.
of college or high school. But
Yeah.
I was definitely toward the older end.
Yeah, but we're seeing is like if we have prime military people, they're older than most of the other cadets.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're getting agencies around us that are hiring 19 and 20 year olds. And then you got them in the same class with it, like a retired Marine Corps gunnery sergeant.
Yeah.
And yeah, sometimes you can tell some of the prior service military guys just going to roll their eyes at the antics of these young cadets,
Yeah.
and some of the stuff is just trying to get them all. For some of them, this is their first real job.
Yeah. And you and I
Yeah,
were talking earlier.
yeah,
You can go to the academy at 19 as long as you're 20 by the time you graduate. And
hmm,
some of these guys have never held a job, so they don't
right,
know to polish their boots. They don't know they need to like wash their clothes and iron their
yeah,
clothes every day before class and just basic things like that. So
yeah,
that was an interesting and it's, not necessarily their fault. They haven't, they don't have a lot of life experience to work with. It just is
yeah.
what it is.
I hear a lot of talk from guys my age that have been around in this business for a while because I'm coming up in a couple of weeks. I'll start year 28, and they'll talk about the young cadets and stuff that are coming through now, and they wanted to ride them, and I guess the older folks did, derided us when we came through.
Yeah.
But I tell them, I said, no, I see every personality that was in my academy class is reflected in these academy classes, and every personality type of every officer I've worked with over the last 27 years is reflected in what I'm seeing in the classes. Um, the one thing that I see different is the reliance on technology and the lack of ability to like interpersonally communicate. And then I don't recall us being as helpless as they are. I remember not knowing anything. I don't remember being helpless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, that's a really interesting. The
Mhm.
interpersonal skills is the thing I hear FTOs and senior people talk about the most. And
Mhm.
you've got 28 years on the job. I've got maybe
Yeah.
28 days on the job at this point. But my FTOs were like, you're moving well through this. And I got a
Yeah.
FTO a few weeks early, and they're like, we don't have to teach you to talk to people.
Yeah.
You already kind of got that nailed down, which not everybody does. And I think I agree with that. People are I, digital natives have just not had, to talk to
Yeah.
people, to date, to make friends, to make plans. So it's,
Yeah. Of course, as soon as I say that, I think about something that I had to institute way back when I was an FTO. Is whenever I had a trainee, they were assigned, like I give them the assignment the first day they got in the car with me, is every day you will report something to me about one of the other people on the shift. So you're going to come in here and tell me something about them. And the only way you're going to
I
know
like
that
that.
is to initiate some sort of contact with them, and you're going to have to ask them questions. And I said, I'm not going to ask you. Just at the end of the day, when I do your DOR, which stands for Daily Observation Report for the audience, if you don't bring it up to me, well, then it's going in your DOR that you didn't complete your assigned task today. Uh,
I like that.
I'm not going to beg you to do your work. And some of the officers on the shift would play along and take it really easy on them. Some of them would not and would make it hard on them. I ain't talking to you, rookie, that kind of stuff. And it's
Yeah.
just, um, but so even back then, I'm talking over 20 years ago when I was an FTO, um, it was, having to get them to break the ice and make that communication. But I think now, if you would just give them somebody else's cell phone number and so you could text them, they'd be okay doing that.
Yeah.
But actually forcing them to communicate, that's a little different.
Yeah. Actually, if you'd let people answer calls for service over cell phone, they'd probably do amazing.
Yeah, yeah. If we could do like an online chat to take reports, which actually might be a more efficient way to do it for a lot of times, but to take reports and the like, that might will work. Might will work.
Well, that's an interesting perspective. I'm like, that is, everybody thinks their generation was so much better than
Mhm.
and that's, since
Yeah,
Captain Crunch was an ensign, but, uh, you know, yeah,
yeah,
we're probably not as bad off as we think we are with the current
yeah,
generation.
yeah. I was sitting around with the guys in my office one day, and we were all 18, 19, 20-year veterans at this point. And I said, "Hey guys, you remember we used to sit around and talk about the old guys?" They're like, "Yeah." Yeah, and I said, "Well, that's happening right now. We're the old guys, all the rookies are talking about. It's yeah. I guess it all runs in cycles, and I'm sure you saw the
Yeah.
same thing in the military as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Same thing. Yeah. These kids coming in, they don't do this now and they don't do that, but they're still getting the job done.
yeah, yeah. Now, did you say you went through EMT and paramedic school during COVID?
I did. So I left the company that I was working for in Northern Virginia in 2019. We moved to where we are now, and I was able to contract with them and just work a few weeks here and there and still do some other episodic work, some firearm stuff, some surveillance stuff, some things like that, and not have to live there and work. Yeah, that's just not my lifestyle. It was too.
Mm-hmm.
So COVID happened, and prior to COVID happening, I knew I had a couple months off, so I jumped in an EMT class. It's just always been a thing I've had a desire to do. Jumped in class, COVID happened, and all my travel got shut down. So all the government in-person training was like kind of
Mm-hmm.
indefinitely on hiatus. They're like, hey, all these things you got scheduled for the year, it's on hold right now. We'll get back. So I decided to jump into paramedic school once EMT ended because I'm just sitting around the house, nothing's going on. So jumped into paramedic school and started working part time as an EMT basic. And then a little bit before I got out of paramedic school, I started full time. And that was 2021. I started full time.
Yeah.
Interesting time to get into healthcare. I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what it was like before. So
Yeah, I just thought it was. Going through all of that while COVID was taking place had to be interesting because all the
Oh
extra
man.
protocols and everything that were underway.
Yeah, all the yeah, the like I never fully got rid of my beard, but we had pappers on all the truck, like the forced air
Mhm.
respirator kind of things.
Yeah,
So learning to use all that, learning like some of the protocols initially were crazy. Anytime we held a COVID patient, we had this little tent we had to put over the stretcher and just
yeah,
yeah, uh, such
yeah.
overkill. And
I remember when it was all first going on. Like it was all like, "Oh my gosh, we got this other thing." Like the reaction when you call for a medical in the scene and they would show up and just kind of it was always a we about to send you to your death by having you take this patient. You know,
yeah, yeah, honestly, people didn't know. And like being a student during that time, trying to get
mhm,
calls and get experience during my clinicals, like sometimes you would go sit there for 12 hours and not turn a wheel. And it's just like,
right,
man, what did I just spend my day like sitting here reading books?
right, right. Now there is a whole language that goes along with being medic. Now, is medic the correct universal term?
Yeah, I think generally we call like I would if you said a medic, I would assume the person's a paramedic, but
Hmm.
um yeah, I don't have any real you can call
Right.
me an ambulance driver, you can call I don't care.
Because that was one thing I know is that calling them ambulance drivers makes them mad around here.
Yeah, some people were like initially were like, yeah, call me whatever you want, but don't call me an ambulance driver. And I'm like, whatever. I
Yeah.
don't, they don't know. I don't care.
Right. So it's EMT basic, then
Yeah, there's,
intermediate and advanced, and then paramedic, right?
yeah, EMT basic and intermediate and advanced are the same. Like they changed it to intermediate
Yeah.
to advanced. But yeah, yeah, basically three levels. And then emergency medical responder is like I
Yeah.
guess like your fire departments and whatever.
Yeah. And then isn't there like a cardiac technician as well that's kind of above paramedic or
Not, not in my state. Not my
okay.
state, and not through National
All right.
Registry. So I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. I know there was something else that was out there, but paramedic being like basically the highest that you're going to be
Yeah,
riding in the truck. I've got emergency medical responder, although I haven't kept up with my hours, so it's probably wouldn't count anymore. But I did do that, and it's there was a cross bridge course or something here that if you had gone through first responder, you could get a shortened path through EMT basic, and some of our guys did that. When I was chief at the sheriff's office, went through kind of a funny thing, and I've told part of this on air, I think. I went through a 40-hour first responder course, basically first responder for cops, and graduated on Friday. And on Tuesday of the following week, I was the first guy into a cardiac event.
oh
And I
wow.
was like, yeah, I need more than this 40 hours. So the next
Yeah,
morning I walked back to the deputy fire chief's office. I'm like, when do you have more medical training coming up? And they had a first responder course about to start. And so I signed up for that, walked back up to my office and mentioned it to the sheriff. And the sheriff said, I want to do that too. So he called back to the deputy fire chief and said, I want to do it. Well, that spread throughout the office. And we ended up putting like five or six people in the class. And so I rewrote our policy on using the patrol cars to respond to medical calls. It was just basically I put it out. If you work for the sheriff's office authorized to drive a patrol car, you are authorized to use the patrol car to respond to medical calls on or off duty because we have a volunteer first responder network that they get paged out for stuff. And if you're sitting at home on an off day
yeah,
and pager goes off, wreck with injuries, whatever, and you can respond, the taxpayers don't care if it's red or blue lights on the car that shows up.
sure.
And so we initiated that. And so we got a lot of guys with the sheriff's office that were also on fire rescue. The fire rescue in that county is a volunteer. They're few
Yeah,
full time employees, but all the stations are manned by volunteers, and it's just a way to augment. And we didn't have any of the rivalry that you see in some of the other
yeah,
places. It was kind of like, no, they really are part of us, and
yeah,
got along pretty well. Occasionally, you have something come up, but for the most part, we all looked at it as we were on the same mission.
yeah. I wish I could get more deputies interested in
Mhm.
responding to medical stuff, giving a crap about it.
Yeah.
But there's kind of a like that's not my job kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there is, I won't say animosity, but there's a standoffishness. And now being on both sides of it, it's definitely with law enforcement. They're
Yeah.
like, no, you're not one of us. Kind of like law enforcement's a little more of a closed
Yeah.
kind of group. The fire departments and EMS get along really, really well. We always
Oh, yeah.
have tremendous support from the fire departments. But
Hmm.
man, I really wish I could get deputies interested in more medical education than just, I've taught in service for a couple of years CPR and
Yeah.
stop the bleed, and I've taught, EMT, and for the last couple of years I've taught the academy first responder portion.
Hmm.
And man, it's I think this year I've got 5 4-hour nights, so it's not very long, and that's
Right.
all most of them will ever get in their career, except for
Yeah.
CPR every year.
Yeah. To me, it just makes sense. Another thing that we did was, the bulletproof vest or ballistic vest, to be the better, more proper term. Um, they have a 5-year expiration period on them. That's set by the National Institute of Justice. Well, we would replace the deputy's vest when they would expire. Well, instead of just throwing away those old vests or going taking them down to the range and shooting them or whatever, we started issuing those to firefighters
Nice.
and just saying like, look, we understand these are expired. Um, but in the event we get an active shooter situation, whatever, it is at
Yeah.
least something you can throw on. They
Yeah.
still work. You got to have an
Yeah. Yeah.
expiration date on them for something. And
Sure.
that was just another thing that we did that
Yeah.
kind of cemented the relationship between the two. Of course, now the sheriff of the county has been a firefighter in the county since he was a teenager, and so that
That helps.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like, yeah, he understands how,
mhm,
medical response works, and yeah.
yeah. Um, Maybe we'll come back to the police academy stuff in a minute if we have time. I know the topic that we wanted to talk about tonight was being your own medical first responder. And it struck me today as I was watching the news that yesterday you had the mass shooting at Brown University, and you also had the one in Australia. And just like people have the mistaken impression that if they dial 911 if some guy's trying to rob them on the parking lot, that it's going to freeze time and the cop is going to suddenly materialize. People have that same expectation that if they dial 911, the medics are going to immediately arrive on scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so easy for the medical staffing and especially rural America to get overwhelmed. I'm actually wearing under my jacket here my T-shirt from the Red Dirt Shootout, which is a Glock match at Oklahoma City Gun Club. Hey Jamie, hey Kemet. Um, I was standing in line to get my registration completed for the match, and two people in front of me had a heart attack. And he was happened to have his arm around someone when he had the heart attack, and that's what kept him from hitting the ground. His knees buckled. They felt him collapse, and they held him up. We slid a chair up under him. 16 minutes for EMTs to get there.
Yeah.
That's kind of the reality.
Yeah.
And so, uh, what would your advice for people to be?
Well, I mean, we're like we all, pretty much everybody probably listening to your podcast, at least regular listeners, kind of acknowledge that, get out of here. Sorry, cat is on the
Yeah,
table.
yeah,
Kind of acknowledge that law enforcement, a carry gun because it can't carry a cop when
hmm
seconds count, law enforcement's minutes away,
yeah,
whatever. Pretty much acknowledge that first responders have to get there to be of any utility to you at all. And sometimes it takes a long time for that. Like I told you before the show, our county's 550 square miles.
hmm
There are about 5 deputies on the road at night. We're
yeah,
about a 100-person agency, but that's broken out between 4 shifts, CID, our narcotics unit, our
hmm
admins. There's 5 or 6 deputies on the road on a good day.
yeah,
So, and they're not necessarily anywhere near you. There's, especially, people like to build these retirement homes on the side of mountains, and so we have wrapped our head around that, and we buy guns, we seek training, we
hmm
practice on our own, we do all these things, but the medical stuff. I don't see the same level of dedication, but it's probably a greater risk, probably something you're much more likely to need. And when I do see people who are really interested in self-preservation and taking responsibility for their own self-protection, it's generally the tactical stuff, which is, the stop the bleed stuff, which is great. And I'm tickled that we've done that. But I've also been on calls where, my least favorite thing to hear on the radio when I'm responding to a cardiac arrest is we're trying to get CPR started, which means nobody there knows how to do it. And they're trying to talk them through it. They're trying to talk them into doing it because they haven't mentally prepared to do it. And I've worked some absolutely heartbreaking cardiac arrests. And it's like, man, it took us a long time to get here because you're way out. And like,
Yeah.
if somebody would have started CPR, we may have had a different outcome on this. And by the same token, I've had some amazing outcomes. Had a 46-year-old arrest in front of his wife. There were deputies actually working a murder right across the street. Ran right over, started CPR like within probably a minute, and that guy walked out of the hospital. So um, we need. I really would like to see people take a much bigger interest in emergency medicine, in at least for their, for personal use, personal
Mhm.
preservation kind of purposes. Seek training on that, and not just the tactical stuff, because there's a lot of other stuff out there. Like you were talking, the heart attack that you witnessed.
Mhm.
There's probably a doctor shooting. I mean, I don't think I've ever been to a handgun class that there wasn't like a surgeon in. I don't know
Yeah.
why that is always the case, but there's probably somebody that knows how to do something there. But there may not
Yeah.
be, and there probably isn't at your house when your kid chokes. When
Yeah.
there's just a myriad of things that can go wrong that you need to be prepared to deal with.
Yeah. So, what advice would you have for the audience?
So my like
How could they get started? What do they need to do?
Okay, so my first and foremost advice would be find a American Heart Association. I tend to favor AHA versus Red Cross, but they're really about the same.
Mhm.
Find a AHA American Heart Association or American Red Cross CPR class. Uh, I hate to say this. I used to kind of look down on CPR because we don't do CPR on the battlefield. CPR doesn't work for gunshot wounds, and that kind of that tactical guy
Mhm.
attitude about CPR, and that is the
Yeah.
case. In the military, doesn't teach people to do CPR because when bullets are flying,
Yeah.
one, it's not going to fix the underlying problem, which is
Yeah.
exsanguination probably, or it's not going to fix the problem, and it's going to tie up other people when there's more important things to do. But in a civilian context, it's probably one of the most likely skill sets you're going to use. And a CPR class, a basic life support class, is not just CPR. They teach you how to assess someone's vitals, figure out if they need CPR or not, teach you how to do CPR on adults, infants, and children,
Mhm.
which are different populations. There are different techniques that you have to use. And they teach you to recognize things like stroke and use an AED, and very, very importantly to me, how to relieve choking in adults and children. And this is a personal anecdote, but in January of 2024, excuse me, I was in a mountain search and rescue class in this super rural town. We're up in the mountains. We've been out all day long, snowshoeing across through the mountains and rappelling and all this. So we all meet up at this Mexican restaurant, and I'm just shoveling in chips like it's my job. And a piece of chip breaks off and completely blocks my airway. One of the most terrifying things I'd ever had. And fortunately, I'm surrounded by paramedics, firefighters. There was a PA sitting right beside me. So a Charlotte firefighter grabbed me up, did the Heimlich maneuver, and popped that chip right out of my mouth. And I wondered about that. Like if I'd been at a shooting class, if I'd been at
Mhm.
some shooting class going out to dinner with the guys, would anyone have had the ability to take care of that? I know if a gunman would have walked in, we all would have been able to take care of that. But
Right.
honestly, that's probably pretty low likelihood relative to
Mhm.
someone choking. And I mentioned CPR to people, and sometimes you're like, well, I'm really, work out, my family's really healthy. Um, you don't just have to be unhealthy to have a heart attack or
Right.
really to go into cardiac arrest. Especially when we talk about kids, people in the firearms community really want to be able to take care of their families, really want to be able to
Yeah.
take care of their kids. The leading cause by a very wide margin of cardiac arrest in children is respiratory. Kids start choking, they don't get oxygen, and that ultimately causes death. That is, if I had kids, there is no way in the world I would not know how to relieve choking in children and perform CPR on a child. Like
Yeah.
that seems like such a basic thing that everybody should know how to do. So I think that would be my number one piece of advice is get to a CPR class. 'Cause it's not just, it's not just CPR. It's a
Yeah.
number of other things that go into that. But um, that would be my first advice.
Seems like every football and basketball season, there's a national story somewhere that's just like a blip on the radar for a day or so, where like a 15, 16-year-old has a heart attack and dies at practice
Yeah.
at a game because they had this underlying health condition that nobody knew about, and then they get involved in this strenuous activity, and then it happens. Or baseball season rolls around and a child gets hit in the chest with a baseball, and it goes into cardiac arrest. And like I say, it's not from heart disease, it's from some other
Yeah.
factor that's causing it. Well, the treatment is still the same, is it not?
Sure. Yeah. So commotio cordis is that thing of getting hit in the chest
Mm-hmm.
right when your heart is in this specific part of its
Right.
normal cycle. A strike to the chest at that exact moment can cause your heart to just stop. And that's the year I was in. When I was in EMT school, there was a big news story about I think a football player who had this happen. Also,
Mm-hmm.
when simultaneously, well, not simultaneously, but while I was in EMT school, we also had a paramedic come in who had been at her kid's basketball game. Kids collided. Some other kid went down in cardiac arrest. Same thing, commotio cordis. All she did was hands only CPR for
Mm-hmm.
probably about 15 minutes until the medics got there with, it didn't call for a shock because it didn't restore cardiac rhythm. But once
Right.
they got there, we're able to push some drugs. They got a shockable rhythm, shocked him, and he was, I mean, that kid came in and talked to us with her as well. And that was a pretty amazing story. But uh, man, that's a like life and death stuff that is infinitely not, it's very fixable. You're very
Right.
capable of handling a lot of these things. And,
Yeah.
to what you need more than anything is the knowledge and the skills. Equipment, like man, we love equipment. We love gear. What should I put in my first aid kit? What tourniquet should I buy? We argue about like whether a rat's tourniquet's okay or not, whether a cat tourniquet will get small enough for, some
Mm-hmm.
super tiny child's limbs. And what we don't talk about is like what training do I need? How often do I need to refresh my CPR? What's my next steps after I get like a CPR and a stop the bleed? What do I need to go to? It's really easy to focus on the gear, but if you have a lot of skill, you really don't need a ton of gear. Um, I mean, without an ambulance, without all these cardiac drugs and a cardiac monitor and all these different tools,
Mm-hmm.
I'm really just an EMT basic. Like,
Yeah.
and that I don't teach paramedic class. I don't feel like I really have the experience to teach paramedic school, but I do teach EMT class a lot, and I love that curriculum. I think everybody should take it because it doesn't require all these things. It doesn't require all these fancy interventions. It's the things you have in your head and then things you can improvise. It's very easy to do a bunch of stuff if you just know how to position a patient, how to assess a patient really well,
Mm-hmm.
how to improvise, this, that, or the other. It's not dependent on all the cool toys. And I mean that's what I really get excited about is giving someone the capability to do that with all this without all this junk, cool guy, expensive equipment.
Yeah. Of course, I don't want to say it's funny. It's kind of that cop's gallows humor. I used to work with an officer that had four unsuccessful CPR attempts in a very short amount of time. And so instead of referring to, on the radio, everybody has a number. And instead of using his radio number, we started using the 10 code for the coroner. We wanted to call him. And I've heard the kind of the criticism say, well, yeah, CPR is only whatever percent effective. Well, okay, that may be true, but it's 100% more effective than not CPR.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and the reason it's not effective a lot is I think
Yeah.
we, like our first responders.
Mhm.
So in our county, we have EMS is a third service. We have fire departments, EMS, and law enforcement. And usually it's our fire departments and law enforcement who get there first. And they don't have, I have an AED in my patrol car. A handful of people do, but
Mhm.
uh, usually it's them that get there first. And some of our firemen or fire departments are staffed by very young individuals who in some cases are very experienced, very knowledgeable, but in some cases are not, and may start CPR in somebody that I wouldn't I would be comfortable just calling a code 15 and
Yeah.
calling the medical examiner and calling it a day.
Yeah.
So sometimes they'll start CPR on somebody that maybe it shouldn't be started on, or um, one of my, it's a little bit of a sidetrack. One of my absolute pet peeves is family not honoring do not resuscitate orders. And that, the family has the right to revoke that here, which it drives me absolutely nuts. This person took the time to plan their wishes and put it down in writing and have a doctor sign it, and the family's just gonna, to completely disregard that. And they want us to do everything for someone who's 94 years old and has stage 4 lung cancer. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
if we get this poor woman back, she's still going to be 94. She's still going to have
Right.
stage 4 cancer. And now she's going to have all this chest trauma. She's going to be naked
Yeah.
in the back of an ambulance with a bunch of firefighters and paramedics catching up with each other and joking around. And like,
Yeah.
it's not going to be the pretty, beautiful thing that you think it's going to be.
Right.
But here or there. But yeah. So with all my rambling out of the
Yeah.
way, yeah, CPR is it's not super effective. So what it does is it just keeps blood for the listener. It just keeps blood circulating. Hands only CPR will move a little bit of oxygen in and out of the lungs, and it just keeps blood circulating to keep that tissue alive. It generally doesn't fix the underlying problem, which is the heart
Right.
being in a disorganized arrhythmia or completely stopped, completely arrested. In some cases, like a lightning strike, CPR may fix the problem, but usually not. Usually we need cardiac drugs and/or really a shock is what we need. But cardiac drugs will sometimes kind of stimulate the heart to start back up, epinephrine, amiodarone, whatever. But CPR really just keeps that tissue alive until somebody gets there that can do some sort of intervention to get them going against. And it has to be good, high quality CPR for that to be effective. Because what we're looking at is not just keeping that person alive, but giving them a good quality of life afterward. I can do half-ass CPR, and it may keep them alive, but I want that person's brain to be perfused to the point that they have,
Mhm.
you know, most of the cognitive function they had before they
Right.
arrested, and if they suffer a big insult because they haven't had enough oxygen to the brain for 5,
Mhm.
10, 15 minutes, that's not going to be a great outcome for them necessarily. So uh you need to, like, not only just get a class once in your lifetime and call it good, but actually keep up on this stuff and take the opportunities in these classes to practice on mannequins and things like that.
Yeah. No, I will confess that I've been in numerous incidents in which CPR has been performed. The success rate hasn't been
No.
high, but there have been successes. You know, the very first one that I mentioned that caused me to get more training, we actually brought that person back, and they lived. Another one that I did not roll on, but I'm aware of it. Um, Truck driver had a heart attack driving the truck. Thankfully, he was stopped when he had it and just
Yeah.
at a traffic light and didn't move. And somebody finally walked up to him, "Hey, buddy, what's the problem?" And he's had a heart attack there in the cab of the truck. Well, firefighters get there really quickly. One of them pulls him out of the cab, gets him on the ground, and does really good quality CPR. And the guy didn't ultimately didn't survive, but they got him back, got a rhythm back, everything, got him to the hospital, and his wife and daughters were able to get to the hospital and be with him when he passed.
Yeah. Well,
Where
that's
if
good.
they
Yeah.
had
I mean, that's
not
that's
done this,
something. Yeah.
yeah, or if they had not done the CPR, that his family would not have had that opportunity to be with him when he went. Um, or I can't begin to guess the number of firearms classes that I have been to as a student and or instructor. Um, I have never once been present when the medical plan has had to be activated for a gunshot wound. I have had instances in which we've had to do it for both heart attack. I just relayed one with heart attack and heat issues here in the South. Seen it quite a bit. of heat. Could you
Yeah.
talk about that?
Sure. So that heat exposure is like the best medicine for that is prevention.
Hmm.
Really staying hydrated, taking those opportunities to get in the shade when instructors gives break. And most of the classes I've been to, yours,
Yeah,
it was pretty hot down there at the. It was
yeah,
like April, but it was still pretty warm down there at the first cognitive conclave. Like Tom's, Tom's classes
yeah,
out at Mead Hall in Oklahoma. Those places can get hot, and a lot of
yeah.
students go through some of those
Hmm.
sites and some of those instructors, but taking opportunities to get in the shade when instructors give breaks. Sometimes,
Hmm.
sometimes you don't want to walk back there to the shade structure. Like let's just keep going. Taking the opportunity to drink water, and it
Yeah,
doesn't have to be ice cold water. It doesn't have to be the best tasting thing. You just need to keep water going through your body. Talk about wilderness survival sometimes is and I stole this from Cody Lundeen. Your all survival is trying to maintain, trying to thermoregulate at 98.6 degrees. You don't want to get too much hotter than that or too much colder than that, or you're going to start to have problems. And water is just like coolant in your body. It keeps your blood at the correct viscosity. It and your blood moving around your body is taking heat, moving it through vessels that are close to the skin, allowing that heat to dissipate, creating sweat that cools by evaporation. As it evaporates off the skin, it takes heat with it. As it wets your shirt, if you're wearing a cotton shirt in the summer, that provides you a little bit more cooling. And really, water is 99% of the battle. And sometimes, it's not necessarily going to be enough, especially if you have underlying health conditions. It's really something to be aware of. Really need to be aware of your, kind of what your health situation is. And you may need to take a little more, if you got to sit out a couple drills each relay, that may be what you have to do. One of the most interesting things I've seen in a long time. This was I recently helped with a class that Mike Seeklander, Rich Brown taught. We were like 40 minutes from the nearest hospital, and for their medical plan, I've seen a lot of instructors say, if anybody has a health condition, they want to come up and talk to me about it later, and nobody ever does because nobody wants to, slow the class down or put their stuff out in the street. While we were still in the classroom, they passed around a form, said, "Hey, write your stuff, pre-filled form, your medications, your conditions, whatever, your next to kin. Put it in this envelope, seal it up. If we need it, we'll open it up. Write your name on big on the outside. If we need it, we'll open it up. But if not, you'll just get this envelope back at the end. Nobody has to see that." And I was like, man, this is really good information to have. This is really helpful to have. So, if somebody goes down for heat in a lot of shooting classes, that's pretty high probability because we have a training season. You don't see a lot
hmm.
of shooting classes in February in Oklahoma. They're usually spring through late fall when the weather's nice and out in the sun. Oklahoma, it's just so dry with the wind,
Yeah,
the breeze all the time. You can lose a lot of water really, really quickly. Your temperature can start to go up. Hey, lay down. My German Shepherd's chasing the cat around. Ah, dogs.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, really, that's the best thing you can do is prevent it. If you do have somebody go down from heat, we just got new guidance last year that now active cooling takes precedence over whatever other measures. You want to try to get that person cooled down. If you can get ice packs, cold bottles of water, anything that will is a heat sink that will
yeah.
absorb heat into the armpits, into the groin. Again around the neck. These vessels are
Hmm.
fairly close to the skin. Pull some of that heat off, pour water on that person. We don't want to do it so quickly that we make that person start to shiver, which is the
Right,
body's natural response to being too cold. And even though the core might be cold, the body takes a lot of its cues from the skin temperature. So we do want to cool the skin down. We don't want to, dump a Gatorade, cooler full of ice water on them and make them
right.
start shivering, but start cooling them off and trying to get as much heat off quickly. If that progresses beyond a certain temperature, like 105, 105 degrees, their body temperature, we can get into some like more long lasting serious effects. They can start to have seizures, have more permanent damage and graver conditions. We want to try to prevent that. And another key piece of prevention is understanding what to look for when you're out there on the range. Hey
Hmm.
man, his skin's really dry and flushed looking, and he's maybe not quite as sharp as he was a few minutes ago. And everybody else is pouring sweat, and this guy's bone dry. That it might
Yeah,
just knowing to look for that. everybody's a safety officer. Everybody should, again, be able to just look at those or kind of understand what those basic cues of that are, especially that being a high probability thing in a training class.
Right. Um, Now, obviously, we're not having firearms classes out in the dead of winter. Usually, I did have one that was 17 degrees when we started, uh, and
That's not for me.
but it was a nice sunny 17. I set up heat stations and everything, and it was fun. Uh, but you mentioned being on, the search and rescue team, and it seems like we always hear these stories, right? This person goes out hiking and gets lost in the woods, and they're like wandering around for 9 or 10 days or whatever. Uh, what advice do you have for staying warm? Your car could break down, somewhere, and like it's going to be 20 degrees here tonight. And if it was out having to go to the store or something for whatever, the car breaks down. How do you stay warm? And if you're lost in the woods, what are some survival tips?
So the first and foremost, like probably 80% of what we do in our search and rescue team is carryouts for people with orthopedic injuries. Somebody goes in the woods, twists their ankle, breaks their tib fib, you know, pops a knee out, whatever. That's 90% of what we do. And those people are usually on the ground when we come find them. We treat for hypothermia 365 days a year, spring, summer, fall, winter. It doesn't matter. We treat for hypothermia because that heat loss can happen really quickly, especially when you're stationary and on the ground. The other thing that heat loss hypothermia does is it affects your body's clotting cascade. It makes it more difficult for you to clot. So if you have, especially an internal injury that no one can see, it's going to bleed a lot more, or its ability to clot is going to be greatly reduced if you're cold, if you're hypothermic. So we want to keep you warm. First and best way to do that is to keep you off the ground. Anything you can put between you and the ground that's going to insulate you that's probably the single biggest thing you're going to do. The entire Earth is trying to reach stasis and make everything the same temperatures. Anything that's warmer that touches something cooler, they're going to eventually equal out, assuming they're about the same mass. So ground that's cooler than you that you sit down on is going to start to pull heat out of you, so you want to avoid that intimate contact, especially really cold things like rocks. But even just dirt. Unless you're in the desert and the ground is hotter than you are going to lose heat from the ground. If you can fold up jackets, blankets, if you have a sleeping pad because you're out backpacking, get something between you and the ground. If you got to have, your hiking buddy rake up a bunch of dry leaves to try to get you up on that rather than being on the ground. We have a really famous incident. I wasn't on it. This was about a year before my time, of a guy who jumped off a waterfall. He broke his back and he landed in this shallow pool. His head was out of the water. And it takes us sometimes several hours to get to someone because we have to be
Mhm.
called out. It's volunteer. We have to say we're responding, get dressed, drive up, wherever we're going to the trailhead, hike in, make a plan. It takes some time. So they didn't want to move this guy because he had an obvious spinal injury and they left him laying in this pool of water. And we got there and, like, for God's sake, the injury has been done. Please take him out of this water so he doesn't freeze to death because he's
Yeah,
profoundly hypothermic now.
yeah.
Um, get out of water. If you're in water, get out of it. If you have wet clothes on, get your wet clothes off. That's especially if it's a hydrophilic fiber like cotton, it's going to suck heat out of you faster than you can replace it. Um, Things that will exacerbate that are really cold ambient temperature and wind. Wind increases
Mhm.
that effect greatly, especially if you're wet. So if you're wet, get out of your wet clothes. If you have, I'm wearing this big heavy wool sweater because it's really cold here tonight. If my t-shirt's soaking wet, I would rather take the t-shirt off and just put this sweater back on than have both on. I've got less clothing on, but I'm gonna say much warmer than I will with a wet t-shirt on. So get yourself off the ground, uh, get any wet clothing off. Uh, any layers you have, anything you can, one, get out of the wind, and two, put bulk around you to warm the air around you is going to help. If you got to stuff dry leaves into your clothing, that's kind of, now we're kind of getting down to, you know, survivally kind of last resort stuff, but anything you can do to preserve that heat is going to be good. Those silver blankets, I see a lot of people carrying those. I mean, we see a lot of people that are wrapped up in those when we get to them in the woods, and even a lot of first responders carry those, but Uh, if your body is not producing some heat, those things don't have any heat to hold in. They're pretty good at retaining heat if you have some, but if you are already hypothermic, already behind the power curve, those things aren't going to do you a ton of good. They're helpful for what they are, but don't I guess just don't think it's a silver bullet and think this is
Mhm.
all I need to for hypothermia prevention.
Right. So you mentioned people should start off by going to some sort of CPR class. What is the next step after that?
I think the next step is I would like to, if perfect world, a TCCC, TECC, Tactical Emergency Casualty Care, Tactical Combat Casualty Care. That's your cool guy medical stuff. Most of the medical training I've been to in conjunction with firearms courses is kind of a derivative of that. I teach a class that's kind of a derivative of that in, 4 or 8 hour blocks, depending on what's needed. Um, and that will teach you how to use a tourniquet, how to use hemostatic agents, how to pack wounds, how to use pressure dressings, um, how to position a patient, basically airway management without having to be tied to that patient now. That would be the next thing I would like to see in someone's progression. I mean, ultimately, I think you should have to be an EMT basic to graduate high school. I mean, it's basic knowledge, and it is so incredibly valuable, but that's not the case. And everybody, unless you work in one of these fields, you kind of have to get this on your own as you can. And I understand that. So after a CPR class, which, I think is probably the most likely stuff you're going to need, then a tactical medicine class, TECC, TCCC, Dark Angel Medical, Jonathan Willis out of Ohio is teaching really good stuff. There's Caleb Causey with Lone Star Medics. There's a
Mhm.
lot of people teaching really good tactical medical curriculums. That would probably be the next thing I would urge someone to go to.
Yeah, it's one thing I've noticed in the training world is high round count classes sell, but they're
Yeah,
probably the least useful. Medical classes are the most useful and they don't sell. And force on force doesn't sell
yeah,
either. And the medical classes and the force on force would probably behoove you more than yet another high round class. So unless it's one of mine, you need to pay to come to one of my high round count classes. But if I ever have them again. But you just mentioned several very good training avenues, and those guys, it's constant. They are out there browbeating, trying to get people into classes, and they have a hard time selling them.
they
But
do. And yeah, I don't know why. I honestly don't
yeah,
know. I mean, really, it's for not doing reasoned
mhm,
assessments of what we need and doing the thing that's
yeah,
most likely. To some extent, we're doing things that are fun, and so am I. I'm just
yeah,
like everybody else. I'm doing the thing that gives me the dopamine hit, and sometimes that's
yeah,
being on my high horse on the internet about what training people should get.
yeah,
Um, but and I'm a gun guy.
yeah,
Love reading about guns, love watching YouTube videos about guns, love going to training, love shooting. I'm all for that stuff. But when it comes down to the actual protection of myself, my family, my
mhm,
pets, my community, because I'm not above my community, I'm not
yeah,
outside of it. I am a member of my community. I want to be an asset, especially as a deputy on the road. If I come up on an accident, I don't want to be like, hope EMS
yeah,
gets here pretty soon. I
hmm,
want to be an asset. I want to be as helpful as I can possibly be. Last night,
yeah,
my girlfriend and some of her friends and I went to a local bar. Some guy came in. One of her friends' husbands came in. He's like, "Yeah, somebody's collapsed over there at the bar." So I'm like, what the hell, man? You didn't, what's going on? So
hmm,
I walk over there, and a guy had a seizure and fell over backwards in a seat. So I waited. I mean, there was really
yeah,
nothing I could do, but um, I've had many opportunities in my
yeah,
personal life to help
hmm,
someone in a medical or traumatic injury situation.
yeah,
As a civilian, I have never pulled my gun, never had to use
yeah,
my gun, never had to shoot anyone. And odds are pretty good that I will never have to. I live in a reasonably safe space. Crime is not evenly distributed throughout the population.
mm,
Odds are pretty low that I'm going to need to use a concealed handgun to defend myself. I don't discount the fact that I might, I still carry a gun every day. I train hard. I go to several classes every year. Um, but I also, realize that medical is that's why I got into being a paramedic. I'm like, if you really want to be good at this, go do it for a couple of years. And, not only will you have the education, but the experience as well. Yeah, it is kind of disheartening at times that, people just don't see the seriousness of this.
Yeah, I have a student that was in a car crash, and two guys passing by see the car crash, jump out to see if they could help, and end up putting tourniquets on each of her legs, and that saved her life. She's a double amputee now, um, from the injuries sustained in the car crash, but she lived to see her great granddaughter be born. She would not have
That's awesome.
been able to do that had these two guys, one, they had tourniquets, two, they had the knowledge to put them on,
Yeah.
three, they had the willingness to jump in there and do that, and they saved her life. And like I said, she got to see her great granddaughter be born, great grandchild. I think it was a daughter. Um, you know, that's out there. I said earlier, witnessed the guy have the heart attack. Now, thankfully, there was somebody on scene that had more knowledge and training than I did, and he immediately took charge. And I was so thankful that he was there to do that. Um, but it freed up to go do other things, like let's get somebody to the roadway to get the ambulance in, all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. Um, I already mentioned the heat casualties and stuff, but I see that at firearms training or events pretty regularly. And I want to say these same people that come to these classes and these events, they hesitate to go to the medical classes. And I wish we could flip that and get them to go in, seeing the importance of the medical and getting those classes.
Yeah, I absolutely, and again, I think firearms training is important. I wish more people would go to firearms training, and
Yeah.
if I think about it long enough, I get frustrated that more people don't have an interest in firearms training because
Right.
like I say, I go to several classes a year out. Every class, I try to find a buddy or somebody to go with me, and I've
Hmm.
succeeded in that maybe two classes in the last 3 or 4 years. You just,
Yeah.
I mean, and still uh, that far surpasses people who will go, pay out of pocket to go to a medical class.
Yeah. And it's something that is so useful in every other aspect of your life. And it's something that you can do as the family, even if you can't get the family to go shoot with you. All right, let's all go to a CPR class together.
Yeah.
Because this may lead to us saving each other. Let's all go to a TCCC class or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Anything else on the topic of being your own medic you'd like to discuss?
Um, I would like to talk about tourniquets just for a second.
Sure.
I'm kind of becoming known as the anti-tourniquet guy, and I'm not really, because, like you said, they saved that lady's life,
Yeah.
and she lost her legs, but she's still alive. And I
Yeah.
actually, maybe my fifth or sixth shift as an FTO, I'm riding with my sergeant. There's an emergency traumatic injury comes out like
Hmm.
half a mile from where we are. We're by far the first people on scene, and in 5 years of EMS work, that is the first and only tourniquet I've had to put on. I've actually had to put on someone. Lady got her leg
Hmm.
caught in a PTO of a tractor, and it basically just plucked her leg off,
Yeah.
below the knee. Um, Tourniquets are amazing at what they do. Like that was the
Hmm.
my sergeant as we're walking out. He's like, "Hey, if you need a tourniquet, use mine because I want to get a new tourniquet." And I'm like, "Well, we probably won't, but okay, okay." So and then we ended up using
let's
it.
let's
So
spend the $30 and get one anyway.
yeah. So yeah, I replaced his out of the ambulance. But
Yeah.
so we're walking down, like that's I'm like, we probably won't. I've been to gunshot wounds, I've been to dog bites, I've been to car
Hmm.
accidents with multiple fatalities, I've been to, I mean, just about you name it. And that's the first tourniquet I have ever had to apply to anybody. I've been able to control bleeding
Hmm.
in many other ways. And I think tourniquets are good for cops to carry on their duty belts because we wear body
Right.
armor. It protects you from things that would otherwise be unsurvivable. But frequently there's a first aid kit somewhere else in the car. Um, the thing I'm not in love with is the civilian. community of like if you have a tourniquet, you're medically prepared because
Yeah.
tourniquets only work on your extremities. We have a lot of other body that can survive gunshot wounds if we have prompt medical care. And if we're only carrying a tourniquet, we have no ability to, it just doesn't work on anything
Right.
other than an extremity. I really like the Olays modular bandage. I carry that, in my cargo pocket every shift. I carry one in my back pocket in my personal life. It's a little bit bulkier than a tourniquet, but it's a pressure dressing. The gauze comes out. You can use it to wound pack. It has a hemostatic agent built in. It's a very versatile dressing that you can use for a lot of different things. You can use the pressure dressing on a neck wound. You can use. I've stopped an arterial hemorrhage from the head with one of those bandages in a lady who fell in a nursing home. It's a very versatile, very capable medical device. It's only one thing. It's cheaper than a tourniquet. You I just and tourniquets aren't harmless. The problem, one of the side effects I see of the gospel of the tourniquet is that any bleeding anywhere, especially with cops, I'm not bad
Put
mouthing
a
them.
tourniquet on it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So Mama's got a little cut to her forearm and she's got a tourniquet
Yeah.
high and tight. It's
Yeah.
like, guys, come on.
Yeah.
But when all you got's a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
But tourniquets aren't harmless. They can cause some complications. They can cause some damage. We don't need to be using them if they're not indicated. So that's another thing. I if I have the opportunity to talk about, I like to at least
Yeah.
mention.
Yeah. Um, we need to talk about your book.
Yeah.
All right, if you
So
would.
all of this is covered in pretty good detail in my book, Competent and Dangerous: Master the Skills to Be a Man Among Men. So this thing is Uh, spent 3 years writing this thing. It's 600 pages. It's a huge 8.5 by 11 book. It weighs 3 pounds. It's like everybody kind of balks at the price until they see how big it is, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Holy crap, this is a huge book." Um, 326,000 words, and 40,000 of those are on first aid. All the stuff we're talking
Uh,
about now. I go into traumatic injuries, using tourniquets, hemostatic agents, wound packing, pressure dressings. I talk about diabetic emergencies, seizures, um, allergic reactions, heart attacks, all this stuff. In addition to chapters on personal physical fitness, personal financial stability, EDC, firearms, wilderness survival, preparedness, a bunch of different stuff. Competent and Dangerous: Master the Skills to Be a Man Among Men is the title. Yeah.
and one of the chapters has a great heading.
It sure does.
Yeah.
I might have heard that somewhere.
Help may be on the way, but you are already there.
Yes. Man, I heard that. So I tried to have a quote for every single
Yeah.
one of these chapters, and I'm like, what great quote am I going to have about emergency medicine? I was listening to your
Uh,
podcast one day, and I'm like, man, that's
yeah.
perfect. And I think that's what probably when I reached out to you.
Yeah. And it's like you are already there. You could be helping. You
Yeah, yeah,
could be fixing something. Or you could be saving yourself.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Is the book available on Amazon?
It is available on Amazon, and right now it's only available on Amazon. I just don't have the
All right.
time or bandwidth to ship out books, but yeah, you can find it on Amazon.com.
All right. We'll put a link to that in the show description. Yeah, and hopefully we'll get you some book sales out of that because folks, you need this book. Need this book. Now, I gotta ask you about going through the academy
Okay.
because there's a topic there. All right, here you are, former special forces guy who actually knows how to use a handgun because I've seen you shoot a handgun. What was the reaction from the firearm staff when you went through the academy? You're like, oh, this guy knows what he's doing.
So most of them already knew me. Several of them are on SWAT teams, and I had like just I don't know through several years of living here, kind of
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how, but ended up training with the SWAT team some and stuff. So most of them weren't super surprised.
All right.
I graduated the academy in May, and in August I got a waiver to go through general instructor. I can't teach it. Like the state says I can, but I
Right.
don't know anything about like traffic stops or I don't know any
Yeah.
of that stuff. But it's really just to get me to firearms
Right.
instructor. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was. It was very eye-opening for me because even though
Mhm.
you read like guys like you and Greg and Chuck that are like, yeah, cops can't shoot. I don't think you really understand until you're out there and you're like, wow, this is it. This is the baseline level. And our state's qualification is it's on a B-27 silhouette. Um, you can you can be all over that thing and still have a
Mhm.
score in the 90s, and it's pretty surprising.
Yeah. Um, it's funny how some things get so traditional and the way we've always done them, like the B-27. It never was a good idea, but it won't go
Yeah.
away either. Won't go away. It's funny. I did preface it. You are, a special forces guy that did actually know how to use a handgun. Because I see a lot of guys come through the academies that are prior military, but they've shot a rifle. They've never shot a
Yeah.
pistol, and it doesn't translate. And so I was just kind of curious to see how somebody with a high level of skill, like yourself, what the reaction was.
A lot of just biting my tongue and saying yes, sir, uh, is is uh, is what got me through the academy.
Yeah.
I guess it makes me. I don't know if sad is the right word, but for most of these people, they will go to their agency, they will qualify, they will do a day and a night qual once a year, and that is
Hmm.
that for the vast majority, that is all they will do, and they do not have a high level of skill, and it makes me
Right.
concerned for their safety.
Right.
And not, like not just being killed, but maybe
Yeah.
killing someone else. And our local officer involved shootings tend to follow national averages, 3 or 4 shots
Hmm.
with about one connecting
Yeah.
with the intended target. Uh,
Yeah. We got, I struggle to call them standards because they don't rise to the level of standards. Adopted it here in Georgia this past year that are just abysmal. And there are cops that are passing the academy that would not have passed it in 2024, but they passed it in 2025 because the standards
mm,
changed.
yeah,
Um, and we're about to do something else in 2026, but we don't know what that's going to be yet. Although 2026 is coming in a hurry. Um,
yeah,
but there's that political football that goes on with that, and the people, again, they dial 911 and they have that expectation that a properly trained, highly motivated, public servant's going to show up. It's going to be Andy Griffith when they need Andy Griffith. It's going to be RoboCop when they need
yeah,
RoboCop, and that's not what the applicant pool is made up of. Um, and really and truly, the standards are not all that high,
yeah,
at least not on the shooting stuff.
yeah, yeah. Ours actually, our standards. I use the term
Yeah,
loosely. Actually went
yeah,
up in 2025 from having to shoot 70% to having to shoot 80%, which is
yeah,
still not good.
right,
Um, and that's the state standard. So our agency has a little bit different qual, a little bit tighter
right,
standards, and our training officer is a
right,
very intelligent guy. He's working very hard to try to adopt a new target that's anatomically relevant and has
yeah,
more graduated scoring and this, that, and the other. Because basically everybody shoots like 100% or 80%. There's not a whole
yeah,
lot of, you
right.
know, um,
Yeah, our standard is 80%. Um, but when you do the math, if they get all 10-point hits, they can miss the target completely 6 times and still get to 80%.
yeah,
And that's just to me is reinforcing very, very negative uh, outcomes there. I took the liberty of drawing up a course and sending it up to the powers that be. I know it's not going to get adopted, but I couldn't help it. Um, we had this huge battle. Well, I won't say battle, but a huge, flip flapping over. Georgia's always been a 25-yard, uh, max distance since I've been on the job. It used to be 50 way back in the day, but my whole time 25. We've shot out to that. Uh, this year, 2025, Post dropped that to 15 as the furthest you have to shoot.
oh wow,
All right. And I heard a lot of agencies instructors, administrators, everything. Oh, this is awful. I don't have. The rules say you may shoot at a course that's higher than these standards. These are just the minimum.
Yeah.
And I will point out, well, you can do what you want to just as long as it exceeds that. And they all chose to regress to the mean. Regress back to the minimum, I guess would be the way to say that. And it's just I don't get it. And there's people that are hung up over I can't believe we only got to shoot to 15 now. Well, I'd be happy with only shooting out to 15 if it's a 100% accountability course.
Yeah. Yeah. It should, at a minimum, regardless of what your scoring
Mm-hmm.
situation is, it should be 100% accountability. You should not be
Yeah.
able to completely
Mm-hmm.
miss the paper.
Right. Yeah, we're telling people that it's okay if you launch rounds into the ether.
Yeah.
And I just don't believe that's acceptable.
And
Yeah.
just hearing other students talk, in the days leading up to the qual,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, "Yeah, I'm real close. I just got to get up a couple points and then I'm good." And it's
Yeah.
like you're not good. The qual is not the goal. The
Right.
qual just says you have trained enough to be at this point to be
Right.
able to shoot this on demand. This is not the goal. This
Mm-hmm.
is not this is not the
Yeah.
finish line.
And so many of them, they get to that at the end of a period of training, and then they don't do anything else other than come back out and qual from then on. And it's just like, just because you did it this one time, this one day, except for us, they have to do it twice. Yeah, you did it twice on this one day
Yeah.
after so many hours of training and so many rounds expired. Can you do it on demand?
Yeah.
And they're putting shots uh, completely out of the scoring areas and stuff, and they're still passing. Oh, great, it's good. And of course, I say all this knowing that firearms is my thing, and that I work to it. Uh, my physical fitness is horrible. If I had to go chase down somebody,
Yeah.
if my patrol car's nearby, I might catch them. But it's one of those things that you're taking other people's lives into your hands when you go to start launching rounds.
Yeah.
And there's, you got to be accountable for that. And I think every guest that comes on, we can sit here and rant about that.
Yeah.
Um,
And I guess the question I've been pondering lately is I'd love to
uh,
make everybody a John Hearn on the
yeah.
range or a Lee Weems you know, but obviously that's time and resource
Mm-hmm.
intensive. There's no way you're going to get everybody to that standard, even if you want to. So what standard is good enough? Because I don't feel like the standard we're at is, I mean, it is bargain basement. What is good enough? How do you assess that? I don't even know how to start wrapping my head around that.
I really don't think the shooting problems that we face are really that difficult. Um, there's this whole thing, that goes on about the competition guys, versus the application guys and all that kind of stuff. And it's like the shooting problems that we're going to face. Rarely are cops going to be involved in shootings that are more than a car length or two. But they are going to be in some that are longer. Um, but when you got cops that can't get the gun out of the holster
Hmm.
and can't get off an accurate fired shot on demand in another 2 or 2.5 seconds. Now I
Yeah.
know the competition guys do it. All right, let's say you try it with a level 3 holster and body armor,
Yeah.
um, and you didn't get a walkthrough and you didn't do everything else. I still think that's abysmal, but I'm looking at that from a skills level, not what it should be. But I don't think that it would be hard to get people to an acceptable level. Um, of course, then you have, which what I'm thinking may be acceptable is different than what everybody else is thinking is acceptable.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think it would be that hard and that resource intensive because most of it could be done through dry work if we were training properly.
Hmm.
I would also argue this, that if I had the choice of getting everyone up to in the agency up to USPSA B class or getting everybody up to blue belt and BJJ, I'd choose blue belt
Yeah.
BJJ.
Yeah.
I tell the cadets and used to tell my personnel everything's like be on the range. I'm this good with the gun because this is my passion. This is my hobby. I just get to do it for a living.
Yeah.
If I were to go back and do this all over again, I probably would have spent the effort on
Combatives.
hand-to-hand skills,
Yeah.
combatives and stuff. Because over the course of my career, that would have been a whole lot more useful.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I
more
agree with that.
medical training.
Yeah. And sorry, like back to the firearms thing, because I'd like to
Yeah,
talk about this, but
yeah,
if the time would have been used effectively and there had been some training, but all we did is shoot the qual over and over again.
yeah.
And there's no real, like, I don't think anyone had a strong understanding of how to correct deficiencies
Right.
because it's don't jerk the trigger. uh, uh, and
Even though
that,
that
like,
has nothing to do with the miss, but yeah, I'm familiar.
I thought, okay, maybe we'll shoot the qual once and then they'll like,
Yeah.
we'll do a little dry practice and then we'll do some like, all right, we're gonna bring it back to 25 and work some B8 stuff and then we're gonna,
Hmm.
but there was none of that. It was
Yeah.
just, yeah,
Yeah. I'll go out there and I'll hang a B8 or something. I've had this little target that I can print on 8.5 by 11. That's basically it's the 5.5 inch circle that would be the black on a B8 bull, with a 3 by 5 and a 3 by 3. Inside of that, everybody says it looks like a cell phone, so we jokingly call it the cell phone target. Yeah, I'll go put that up on top of our qual target, and I'll have cadets shoot. All right, if you get out of that 5.5 inch circle, and there's people that can't even keep it in the silhouette, much less keep it in that. And
yeah,
you start trying to work on that, but then it's just the time that's involved. That's the biggest thing is the resources, and like you say, the coaching. I think we're working on the wrong things. I think if we were to focus on the right things, that it wouldn't be that hard to get people to where they need to be.
yeah, yeah. I absolutely agree.
Yeah. Of course, as hard as it is teaching pistol to a bunch of newbies, in 2025 they put patrol rifle into the basic curriculum, and that's like monkeys and footballs.
Yeah, yeah,
It's horrible. It's horrible. Um, Getting people to run the charging handle, to chamber around, getting people to take the safety off and put it back on. It's just like they and understand they're new. They don't have the knowledge
yeah,
of it, and they're not getting enough reps uh, to cement what we're trying to teach them. But we also have to remember they don't know what we know,
yeah,
and we were all new once too. They don't know what we know. Uh, I had two cadets this last session that even though we mentioned make sure you got fresh batteries in your lights and stuff for the night fire portion of it, uh, we're cleaning weapons like later at the and I noticed that two of the lights weren't working on two people's pistols. And I go, didn't we talk to you about making sure you have fresh batteries or your lights being charged and everything? And one cadet looked at me, 100% full. I couldn't find the charging port on their
I
pistol mounted light.
yeah. I mean, yeah, everything he's probably touched is rechargeable.
Right. And another one thought, well, it went dead and I haven't been able to find another one. They thought it was a disposable light. That once it went dead, you threw that away and you got a new one.
Yeah. I want to chuckle about him, but
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't know, you don't know.
Right. And so that tells me that from now on, with every session, I'm going to walk up from the classroom. Okay, folks, you take the weapon light off of the pistol. You open up this back door. This is where you get to the batteries. Things that I just assumed people knew how to do
Yeah.
and the other instructors knew how to do. And we just can't assume that. It's everything has to be at that basic minimum level.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything that I didn't ask you about tonight that you would like to talk about?
I don't believe so, unless you want to ask me how I got so good looking, or I don't know.
That was genetics. That was genetics. There you go. All right. Anything else you want to mention? Bring up?
No, sir, I don't think so. If people want to read more of my content, I have a blog
Hmm.
called swiftsilentdeadly.com. It's been around for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
But no, that's pretty much it.
Well, speaking of your blog, you did write an article that turned some heads here a while back. You talked about
Okay.
the worst class you'd ever taken.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You want to discuss that? In?
Oh my God. So I actually had guns pointed at me in that class. It was the most so that's the one class I succeeded in talking three people to go to with me. Um, my girlfriend at the time was a LEO. She went with me.
Uh,
I had two friends travel like 8 hours away to stay at my place. It was going to be this awesome weekend. It was the most monumental waste of time and money I've ever seen. It was supposed to be
yeah,
one day a pistol, one day a carbine, and it was by like 2:30 on the second day. We hadn't even touched carbine. And like we would shoot a little bit, and it was very unguided. My girlfriend uh, at never got one single moment of individualized instruction. She's probably one of the shooters who needed it the most. There were some pretty decent shooters who turned out to that class.
yeah,
Uh, you bring us into the middle and sometimes talk for literally 45 minutes, just like this stream of consciousness. And I'm like, uh, where is this going? But two, if you want people to internalize the lessons you have to teach, you have to give it to them in manageable chunks, let them go practice it, reinforce it to them, show them what they could do better, tell them they're doing a good job, something. Everybody should get a little bit of your attention, bring them back in, give them a little bit more. It can't be just, man, it was, and I think you know who it was.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I deduced it.
Yeah.
You and I have not talked about it until now. I
Well, no,
deduced who
Hearn
it
shot me
was.
an email and he's like, "Who was
Yeah,
it?" And I told him, and he's like, no, he said, "Was it this
yeah,
guy?" And I was like, "Yeah, how'd you know?" And he's like, "Lee had a similar experience." So,
yeah. Actually, I had a pretty good experience with that guy. But I have trained with him twice,
okay,
and but I've had a similar experience in other classes. And
yeah,
all right, if we're thinking it's the same guy,
yeah,
and we won't say on air, we'll
no,
think about it
yeah,
later.
no, no, I don't want to. Yeah, I
All
don't
right,
like. Some people love the drama, not
yeah.
me.
Yeah, that will get me, 82 emails this week about who was it? Who was it? Well, I'm not telling you. I'm not telling you. All right. Well, man, I appreciate you coming on tonight and taking your time out to be here.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
And to the audience, we know that your number one asset is your time. Thank you for choosing to spend it with us.